Hi, I'm Stu Davies, Ocean Caring Digital Strategist. This podcast dives into the real stories behind ocean caring brands and organisations. Welcome to A Drop in the Ocean. Each episode explores the wins, challenges and lived experiences of those working to protect our seas, from grassroots campaigners to global initiatives. But it's more than just those stories. We're also going to connect these change makers with marketing, communications, AI, storytelling and strategy experts to share their insights and help us all amplify our missions. One drop in the ocean becomes many. Let's make some waves together. Welcome to another episode of A Drop in the Ocean. So I'm really excited about this month's guest. I've got Dean Spears, who is the head of Sussex Bay, and Sussex Bay is a ocean nature conservation project. Dean, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here today.
So, Dean, I always ambush my guests with a question. I don't send them. What I'm always interested in is, what's your personal connection to the ocean? But the question I didn't send you is, and your fondest memory of the ocean?
Oh, those are great questions. Well, do you know what? I've lived in Sussex Bay off and on over the last 20 years. But originally, no hiding the accent, I'm from Walsall in the Black Country, which is about 3 to 4 hours away from the sea. And so the ocean there was holidays in North Wales, Aberystwyth, Cwm Idwal, Llandudno, Prestatyn. And I must have liked it so much that years and years later, I did a geography degree and did my research in the same dank bogs, rivers, streams, in Aberystwyth. So I've had training, and I guess it comes from there. But for me, the best memories and a bit more deeper is that, over the last 10 years, married a Spaniard and discovered diving and sea swimming off the Spanish southern coast in Cartagena, Isla Plana, Maltaron, helping the Spanish government there harness the benefits of less small boat anchoring on marine life. And I guess the greatest memory, I came into it late, so I came into sea swimming and diving, scuba and snorkel in my 30s, and I still remember it now. On the boat, jumping in to the ocean for the first time in a bit of depth, where you couldn't see or feel the ocean floor on your feet. And the Spanish half of the family, who've been swimming since they were Niños kids, could clearly see that I was in shock. They came swimming over and rescued me. But for me, that memory of, jumping in the ocean and realising you're just a tiny little dot amongst things is a great leveller, and a great leveller for the ego as well.
So it was the magnificence of the ocean.
The magnificence, the vastness of it, and how small, quite rightly, we are in all of it. And also the power of it as well, Don't underestimate it, its strength, and what it can do in a great way for nature and people as well. But I'll never forget that memory of jumping in, trying to be cool, but really the Spanish people could see I wasn't.
Wow.
Because I had no training, so it's quite something.
Well, thanks for sharing that. So Sussex Bay, where is it and what is it?
Well, the good news is Sussex Bay, you're here, you're in it. It's a living organism, a place, if you like, from Camber Sands to Selsey Bill, Chichester to Kent, for over 1.5 million people and everything in between. It was christened, if you like, a good 5-6 years ago, we think, by fisher communities who started to refer to the area as Sussex Bay. First and foremost, we're a nature conservation project, if you like. Projects in the water, but it would be wrong to ignore the challenges that coastal communities face. What makes us unique is that we receive no public funding, yet we are hosted in local government as custodians in Ada and Worthing councils, actually. So our centre is Brighton, Worthing, Shoreham, Ada, but we work right the way across 13 currently local authorities in the same way that nature does. And our objectives are to put nature and people first together. So nature conservation, no public funding, people and nature first. And we're a small but mighty team of 3.
Okay. It's interesting you picked up on the word you used. It's a living organism. I think some of the challenges that the coastal environments face, and so ocean conservation faces as well, is a complete disconnection in people's minds of what's out there, versus, it's almost the language that is used, it's the coast, it's somewhere I go. Some of that language is very wooden and matter of fact. It's not saying, well, I'm going to see some wildlife, I'm going to see my environment, I'm going to be in the blue space and the living organism. That's an interesting turn of phrase.
Well, I've kind of been thinking about this because Sussex Bay is all of ours. It's not mine, it's yours. We live here, we breathe it, and it's up to us to care for it and shape it. And it's constantly evolving in the same way that nature and people do, adapting to changing climates. And it's going to be fascinating to see what happens over the next 20 to 30 years in this wonderful part of the world.
Yeah. So where did the idea come from for what is basically a huge, expansive nature conservation project right here in Sussex?
Well, it goes back years. It goes back to at least 2019, where lots of organisations declared climate change emergencies. Lots of good organisations, I might add, declared climate change emergencies. And since that point, there were lots and lots of conversations amongst hundreds of organisations and community groups, locally, regionally and nationally, thinking, well, what can we do to put nature first? Because many people don't realise, some of you may if you're listening to this, but many people don't realise that in the UK there is no long-term funding for the ocean, no sustainable funding for the ocean. I didn't realise that before I entered this profession. So what you've got instead are brilliant groups and organisations working in this space, but having to compete for dwindling resources. So as part of those conversations, a recognition of the need to bring in sustainable, high integrity funding to care for our wonderful natural assets was born. And so all those conversations went back over a number of years. And then a couple of years ago, a very modest person, currently the interim chief executive of Adrian Worthing Councils, had some conversations with a philanthropic funder and a charity called Esme Fairbairn. And they agreed to fund Sussex Bay for 1 year to give us a go. And I thought very carefully, how can I think about and take forward all of those ideas and conversations over the previous years to get us motoring at speed? So we launched in June 2024 to a packed audience, actually, at the Brighton Corn Exchange, a good 450 people. And before I did that, I thought very carefully of our mission and our work priorities so that we could work at speed. But I recognised the need to put nature and people first and to think about working across and respecting political boundaries, but working across them. I've been thinking, I was a geographer. If you think about LSD, longshore drift, back to school there, but the same way the ocean works, from one end of the coast to the other, cutting across artificial human boundaries, of course, there's one ocean in the world. And so we're respectful of those boundaries, but we work across them because there's a recognition amongst all of the groups out there that no one organisation can do this all on their own. Years and years of a lack of funding into the billions. Well, that's where we come in. So we're on a mission to generate a £50 million fund for nature-led recovery by 2050. And to do that, we've opened the UK's first ever Blue Natural Capital Lab, a place of high integrity funding. And in our first year, we raised £1.2 million to make sure that we spend every pound really, really carefully. I said on stage when we launched that I wanted to make sure that communities and science is right behind this. So we are co-producing an area-wide blueprint for Seascape recovery, and we're taking a natural capital approach. What does that mean? Just thinking about how one thing impacts on the other. So, for example, whatever the science shows, if, for example, you were to put a certain type of oysters in an area, making sure those oysters don't unintentionally do harm to other species. And the third area of our work is to engage communities innovatively and creatively. Because, a bit like nature, Sussex Bay and nature is for everyone. It doesn't matter what your background is, what your interest is, what you care. It just matters that you are here and you want to bring something to the party. And so it's on a mission to raise high integrity funding, to do research and to engage communities. And this approach is on our doorstep here. And it's a first for the UK in terms of being hosted in local government but funded externally We're now funded until at least 2028, and we're already looking for sustainable funding streams to get to that target of a £50 million fund for nature-led recovery by 2050.
Dean, thanks. That's brilliant. So, Dean, not everybody will be able to kind of, I suppose, manifest in their brains. What is the problem we're trying to solve here with Sussex Bay?
Well, I always think of it like this. Imagine a future, a sad future, if you like, for a few minutes. The next 25, 50, 75 years. So your children, their children and their children's children. And you are walking on the Undercliff or the Prom in Worthing or wherever you are in Sussex Bay. And this time you're walking on a concrete seawall because the pebbles or sand, if you can find it, has been eroded, as has the cliffs. And you look around and you notice that nobody is swimming in the water. And it's a bit emotive, but imagine if someone was to come up to you in all those years in the future and say to you, how did we let this happen? Because the thing is, sadly, it's already happening in certain parts of the UK. I'll give a Spanish example, being half Spanish, clearly, or like a tal. But take La Manga. We were there a year ago on the southeast tip of Spain, and think home and away, sandy shores. And what you've got there is a beautiful geological spit, an expanse of land separating the ocean from the land, creating a beautiful sandy cove. And we were there. It was 35 degrees, boiling hot, palm trees everywhere, sand everywhere. But nobody was in the water cooling off. I said to the partner, well, what's going on? What's occurring here? And he said, well, the locals there know not to go in the water because over the last 50, 7,500 years, all sorts of toxins and nasties have been dumped in there. Now, the Spanish authorities are brilliant now at clearing that up. But can you imagine if we let that happen here? Because I see a future where local people and communities are thriving, where there is an abundance of kelp, tompot blenny, stingray, cuttlefish, oysters, dolphins, small boat fishers catching sustainable fish, and people just loving being in Sussex Bay and feeling safe to do that. And without Sussex Bay, there is no funding. There is no kind of long-term area-wide strategy. So that's where we come in. It's brilliant that we're hosted in local government because we're custodians and we work with brilliant partners, including the Crown Estate, who own the majority of the seabed in the UK. By being funded, if you like, by high-integrity charities and philanthropic sources, you can act also as a bit like an entrepreneur, a startup charity, and you can challenge things and be creative and do things that are new to the sector.
Right. Okay. So you, as well as having an extremely wide scope, you've also got autonomy to be able to come up with ideas and suggest change.
I think so, and it's important to say that in addition, like being hosted in local government means that in a brilliant way, you're accountable to elected members, to communities and local residents, and every pound that you invest or spend goes through enormous scrutiny, and quite rightly so, and public accounting, which you would expect in terms of our annual reports, which are signed off by elected members, also signed off by the charities themselves. I'll give an example of something creative. I'll give two examples if that's okay. The first one doesn't sound very creative, but it actually is. So as an environmental project, last year I worked with a really good community champion in the area called Rob Allcroft, and we went through the pain of having Sussex Bay trademarked. So the words together, Sussex Bay, and the images and the logo. Now, we were fairly certain we would get the logo and the images to receive trademark for the words together, Sussex Bay. It surprises me how many environmental projects don't think about doing that. And we did it for this reason. Imagine if you're holding an Apple iPhone. I don't have one of those, but I can't. But imagine if you're holding one of those. Years and years ago, when the iPhone was first developed, or an intelligent phone, let's put it like that, was developed, the state, so universities, government departments, paid for the majority of the IP, intellect, and all of this cool sciencey stuff that goes into that phone. Because large parts of it weren't protected, in comes a private company and sweeps away all the profits. We can't let that happen with our wonderful natural assets. So Sussex Bay is trademarked back to the people to local government, and quite rightly so. So that's one creative example.
Okay. So, Dean, what strikes me is you're having to meld a lot of different interest groups, organisations, communities, the local district councils, borough councils, the local businesses with you, get them all on a journey. They've got different needs, they've got different motivations, they've got different angles and viewpoints. How have you even approached that from a high level? It'd be interesting to know.
We're in this together. We see a future that's bigger than ourselves. It's not about me, it's about you. Sussex Bay, again, is a living organism, not a project, not an abstract thing, but it's all of ours. I personally try and take a de-centred leadership approach. You don't need to be the biggest, gobbiest leader out there. I like to put other people forward with they're comfortable and with their agreement, to think with us and to help shape Sussex Bay in ways that are right for them. In terms of talking to different audiences, we talk about our mission, the Blue Natural Capital Lab, the blueprint for Seascape recovery, engaging communities at work quite quickly, and being hosted in local government. That's quite innovative, and actually quite radical, and it's a first for the UK. And I guess for all the different audiences, we're listening and collaborating and welcoming all. Equalities, diversity and inclusion isn't just a soundbite for us, it's a key underpinning theme of ours. So what that means is we love working with communities and organisations and businesses who are already doing good work in the environmental space, such as wonderful Sussex Wildlife Trust, Sussex Kelp Project and Sussex Dolphin Project. But we welcome many others, and everyone really, and people who don't usually choose to get involved in the marine sector. So, for example, I'm a big fan of Surfers Against Sewage, not going to lie, but we also work with Barco, the Black Anti-Racism organisation based in Southwick. And we've been doing some really good work with them. We sponsored their bash at St Anne's Wells Gardens in Hove recently for thousands of people to bring in thousands of ideas about what a blueprint and what Sussex Bay could become. We also delivered an ocean literacy survey, a quantitative thing, a questionnaire for 1,800 people across Sussex Bay, and we're still digesting the results of that. But it shows something like 43% of people really care. So the reason why I'm saying all of this is we really listen to help shape our actions. In terms of the work we're doing with businesses, it's been amazing. So when we launched in June 2024, we had this big public launch, hundreds of people. And then the next day, hundreds of emails came in from those same people. And what I love about this part of the world is, quite rightly, cash is difficult in the current climate. But we had wonderful organisations such as yourself and many organisations coming forward to help us on a pro bono basis. The trademark example I mentioned earlier, 2 local solicitors helped us with that and choose to remain anonymous.
So you put the idea out and people came to you?
People came to us and helped us shape it. And helped us shape it in different areas. In terms of businesses, we've just launched the 1% Business Club, a local organisation called WRAP, Work, Rest and Play, have kindly decided to donate 1% of their revenue, not profit, but their revenue, to Sussex Bay, which is amazing. A small, medium-sized organisation in Brighton. And in the first year, we've decided to split that with the Sussex Dolphin Project, who need a research vessel. So if you're a business out there and you are interested in becoming a second business, we would love to hear from you. Obviously using criteria, people who listen to this will generally care and want to do the right thing. And so that's an example of how we're working with businesses. Communities are helping to shape Sussex Bay in new ways. Later on in the year, we'll be launching a Sussex Bay Community Champion Scheme, and we'd love to say more about that and how to get involved as plans evolved. Using some of the funding, there was just me, but I've recruited 2 wonderful academic members of the team. So Dr. Lewis White, I think he's building his profile now. He helps us with our blueprint, our science, to make sure everything we do is science and research led. And alongside Lewis, we have Dr. Eleni da Silva Siqueira, who is a marine biologist. Eleni is wonderful and warm and kind, and is helping us work with communities in new ways. And you've got me leading this project, bringing it all together, thinking strategically, creatively, and raising the money. And finally, we buy in time from Paul Brewer, who is an outstanding colleague who I've known for 20 years, and he's currently the interim chief executive of Adrian Worthing Councils.
Great. That sounds like a top team. So one thing I'd quite like to know is, has there been a moment so far that's really stuck with you? Something that made you stop and think, this is why we're doing this?
Yes. So living in our part of the world, I'm always struck by the amount of creativity and innovation that we've got going on here. And sometimes I think it can be quite tricky to harness that creativity and that innovation. But a wonderful example of a movement which is doing that right now is Generation Restoration, GenR. So this is what happened. Around 4 to 5 months ago, the leader of that movement and supporter of Sussex Bay, as it happens, Sam Zindel, approached us and said, Dean, I've done something really innovative and I want to link it to Sussex Bay. I've built in my garage a nature restoration music jukebox from scratch. And I also have happened to have took it on stage earlier this year to Glastonbury, which is amazing, like you do. So this is how
just
it
works.
Just as you do, So, okay. So this is how it works now. Pick a song and then you receive a seed and plant that in the ground.
Oh.
I know. And in the first week, 1,000 people did that. So that was wonderful. And then we were thinking with Sam, well, how can we make this relevant? And if you like, it already is, but how can we put this in Sussex Bay so that local people can get involved? So we were approached by the owner of the Big Beach Cafe in Hove Lagoon. That cafe is owned by Norman Cook, aka Fatboy Slim. And so he approached us and asked if he could get involved and host a nature restoration jukebox party. And so at the end of July, we did exactly that. A good number of people turned out to support Sussex Bay, people who wanted to have a bit of fun with nature, that are respectful and are aware of the importance of doing good quality science and research and academic work, but want to do more than recycling and just get involved. The first song that we picked for the opening party was, unsurprisingly, Praise You by Fatboy Slim.
Of course it was.
And I remember that song as a kid or teenager. We've come a long, long way together through the good times and the bad. And as I remember those lyrics, I think back to that video of people dancing, just loving life. I think it was done on a shoestring, a couple of $100. And of course, it's wonderful because it's about being joyful and in the moment, and without getting too carried away. It's a reminder for me that we're all in a relationship with nature. But that's an example, GenR, Generation Restoration, which is a growing movement in Brighton, and it's going to be fascinating to see where that goes. And it's an example of, we didn't see it coming, but that movement wanted to do something that's not really been done before, as we in Sussex Bay work with existing groups, but begin to think about how we get more and more people involved in nature, because that's the only way we're going to do this, folks, if more and more of us get involved to give nature and people a chance together to thrive.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. So we're going to take a quick break, and in the next part, we're going to deep dive into how Sussex Bay have successfully used digital and communications campaign to get their message out there. Okay, we'll see you soon. You're listening to A Drop in the Ocean, the podcast that brings together ocean changemakers and digital communications experts, helping us all amplify our impact. If you've got a story to tell, or you're a digital communications expert who loves the ocean, then I would love to hear from you all. Get in touch with me on stu-davies.com. Let's all amplify our impact. And welcome back to A Drop in the Ocean. So with me is Dean Spears, the head of Sussex Bay. Dean, what I'd really like to talk to you about is how Sussex Bay has used digital and campaigning, those tools to be able to amplify what you do. So I'd like to know how you've approached communicating like a big regional vision like this. What's worked in getting people on board?
That's a great question. So before we launched Sussex Bay, we were thinking about, well, how do we communicate all of these fantastic ideas across such a big area with so many communities, organisations, and so many interests. So we looked across parts of the UK, Europe, and the USA to start with, and we were very keen to, wherever we can, avoid eco-anxiety, because there's a lot of that around at the moment in the world we're in.
So when you say you looked around, so the first part of your strategy was to observe what other groups, similar groups, or similar things were doing already elsewhere before you kind of even put pen to paper?
Absolutely. We spent a good few months looking at successful projects which had found issues or tricky, or even projects that had failed in the environmental sector, but also not just in the environmental sector, the cultural sectors, dance, music, nature, art, and also in the business community as well, to look at the type of messaging that people were trying to do and being positive, hopeful, kind, collaborative, avoiding eco-anxiety where you can, but equally not being afraid to call things out when they need to call out, not dumbing down, stood out as real key pillars for us in our communication strategy.
Okay. I'm a big believer in good diagnosis equals good strategy. And, I think rule number one for anybody starting anything is exactly what you did there, is stop and look, but don't look in your echo chamber as well. Look outside of it, look at what's really going on and draw those lessons and really draw those conclusions. And so what's the toughest part so far? What's been really messy or political or just unexpectedly hard in terms of campaigning or getting the message out there?
I think it's never been done before like this. There's no textbook. You're learning as you're doing, and you're being cautious because you are investing and spending charity money in nature, so every penny really, really counts. And you're cautious about getting things wrong or making mistakes, but you're learning as you're doing. I think when we started off, I can still remember when we started off the socials. So we've built up good LinkedIn followers, and all of them really, TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, and a powerful website in our little engagement toolbox. There's more to come in terms of plinth as well. But I remember sitting around colleagues' dining tables, actually, as we were planning our website and strategy, and we're thinking, we can't launch LinkedIn, we'll have 0 followers. And I remember thinking at one point, well, actually, it'd be quite cool to have 0 followers. But then we just did it and incrementally build it. So I think it was month 1, we did LinkedIn, month 2, TikTok, Instagram. And the way I've done it, we bring in a range of different people who have ideas about how to maximize social kind of media investment and conversion. And it's been people who've approached us with ideas. So, for example, projects motoring along. Recently, a PR person who's just moved to Hove, he's a bit shy, so I won't want to say, but approached and said, you're doing really, really well. You're getting loads of coverage locally, regionally, but I haven't seen anything in the broadsheets or tier 1 media. I can help you with that.
Okay.
But I don't want to do it, if you like, in my day job. I'll do it at the weekends for free. So that's very, very kind. That's a great example. And so what we've done is we soft launched our website, which gets 500 hits a day. Even now, organic hits as well, sussexbay.org.uk. And we feature projects on there, so people who are doing good stuff can come forward and can have a web page, and we keep it live by writing blogs, and then we use all the socials. And that's been working really, really well for us. It's a beautiful website which is easily adaptable. We've built up the usual things as well, an e-newsletter which goes out to thousands of people, which has a really high engagement conversion as well. So whenever we send it, we get hundreds of emails back. But the thing we're working on at the moment is a white label, I think that's the right phrase, a white label approach of working with an organisation called Plinth, who are amazing. And we'll be rolling out the facility for community groups and organisations, if they wish, to upload their events, their details, using their own logo, their own business, for free. so that if you've got a beach clean going on in Selsey or in Hove, you can recruit volunteers. If you're an organisation, and there are many of them in this space who can't afford a website or to run a website, you can come on there and use it for free. White label, you put your own label on there. It's taking forward work that's been done in South Tyneside and inner London. So an ability for groups to upload their details, to form, if you like, a mini ecosystem between them, to interact and to share ideas and thoughts if they wish, is coming forward. And that grew organically. So there's lots and lots of interest in the work that we do in Sussex Bay. And originally we were just thinking of how can we show where we are every day. There's so many things we're doing. For example, it was TEDx yesterday. This morning there's a big science workshop underway in Shoreham by Sea. And this afternoon we're here with you. Lots and lots of activity, and people want to know what we're doing, quite rightly so. So we were originally thinking about buying Plinth just to show that on a map, all the stuff that's going on in Sussex Bay. And then community groups approached us and said, well, we'd like to be part of that as well. And so there's 4 or 5 groups helping to do that. So it's, again, that principle of collaboration and all of ours. So we're constantly thinking about new ways to reach new people.
Okay, that's brilliant. So it sounds to me that you almost laid the nest. What came to my head was a bird nest, and a very comfortable one that's been laid by Sussex Bay. These are the projects we're doing, and we want people to help us and work with us, and it's open to everybody. And here are all the groups, and then you've kind of put that out there, and then now a sparrow's come in and said, "Oh, I want to help you with some twigs on this." I don't know if this is a good analogy. And then maybe a swift has come in, and
it's a great analogy. I'm going to use it. I'm going to quote you on that. It's great.
I feel like that's what you've done from what you've just said. So you do a lot of stuff. Okay, you're involved in lots of projects. How do you balance that narrative? This is a tough question. The science, funding, storytelling. How do you balance that and kind of try and make it make sense in people's heads? Because there's lots of different things going out for people to go, I understand what it's about.
As a team, we grapple with this question quite a lot, and we've come to where we are now thinking at the moment is that we work at different scales and enjoy doing that. So you can be talking to grassroots campaigning organisations who are wonderful, people donating their time in different ways, right up to MPs, politicians, councillors, chief executives on the one day. You learn to adapt and to think very carefully, and you want to create the right conditions in Sussex Bay where people can bring themselves, where there can be peaceful campaigning and peaceful protests, and there can also be policy writing and decisions. It's an interesting balance, You're doing hard empirical science on the one hand in the water, and then the next day you're hosting a party with Fatboy Slim, and it's making sure that credibility is maintained across the thing. We don't have all the answers for that. We'll work it as we go along. It's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. But what I heard there is we're just doing it. We're just going out there and we're just being these things. So I think it's brilliant. So digital is very important. Okay. What role do you see that digital platforms and media playing in connecting people to the Blue Recovery story? How has it impacted how you have grown?
I think it's absolutely core and essential for us. We have a mighty team of 3 with a population of 1.5 million. And, what it's shown is that, when we do events in person, we have a great deep connection with people. If we're running a workshop for 5, 10, 15 people in a key strategic area, that's brilliant. But we need to connect people in different ways. And so in addition to the usual kind of and important measures, the website, the social media channels, the Plinth, the white label package I talked about earlier, we're interested to see where it goes. I love the Internet of Things, and I love, I can see in the future in my head, you go onto our website, you open a digital door, and all of the research that we do and other people comes up, as well as opportunities on a map to collaborate. I was shown something recently, a map of projects where you can click on the project, it comes up what the project is, this is how to invest. It's bringing together all those ideas. There's something in it as well about harnessing the creative communities that we've got here in Sussex Bay. So I've got a little WhatsApp group. It doesn't sound very innovative, but there's about 30, 40 genuinely passionate, creative artist people on there who are collaborating and telling the story in different and really creative ways. For example, a photographer recently put a free exhibition on for Sussex Bay and brought together photographers from across the world, 10 different countries in fact, who donated their art to help the cause. Again, we didn't go out there looking for that, but he came forward and they were thinking, well, how to digitally maximise a bit of that. I think you've got to try it, as you say. Like, if I think about my career, like 10 years local government, 10 years unis, but I did 3 or 4 years for a company called StarRes in the Denver, Colorado tech belt. And that's like a Google company. Mm-hmm. High integrity, brother and sister ran, helping to provide education software to universities. And it's that ability to think about, with IT and digital, long-term, like stable platforms, and then making sure in that system, you've got a bit of flexibility to be creative and to try new things out in a kind of managed sort of way. It was also one of the most fantastic experiences of my life, going into Google-style companies and changing the world.
And I think what also you've done very successfully is laying yourself open for people with ideas to come and be a part of it and actually do something. There's not so many, certainly, we'll say government organisations who are that flexible, say, yeah, we've got this idea, we want to do this amazing, crazy jukebox. Yeah, we'll just do it. We'll get, the most famous DJ in town to front it, So I think, there's definitely that. And so, if I'm trying to, there's so many other people out there who are, thinking about doing things similar in different types of scale to what you've done in Sussex Bay, even if it's like looking after, their little area. What advice would you give them? They're trying to launch like a place-based environmental initiative, like the first thing that they should probably do.
Have a think about communities and people around you and how you plan to define that place. So in Sussex Bay, the boundaries are a little bit deliberately hazy at the sides. One day you'll hear me say between Camber Sands and Selsey Bill, or Chichester and Kent, and that's deliberate because we want that interconnectivity. For us, placemaking is all about connecting nature and people, and thinking about nature as the defining place, and to anchor yourself to the beach or wherever you are. I was talking recently, this morning, in fact, to an officer from Kent County Council, who's just decided to bring together 20 people interested in the sea to get a mini Seascape recovery strategy to go. And good on her, because that's the basis. She's not quite sure how it's going to go, but she just feels, using her pronoun deliberately, that they need to do something in that part of the world. And they're inspired by the work that you have all done in Sussex Bay, not me, but you have all done since 2019. Took us a while to get going between 2019 and 2024 when we launched. But I think that's because we've had those conversations so that when we launch, it doesn't feel, and it's not imposed, it feels like it's yours. So for anybody, I would say work with the communities around you, think very carefully about how you're going to define place and what you plan to do. And it's also, it's good to have a good nose around as well to see what else is happening, as you said earlier, Stuart, in your immediate vision, but outside your vision as well in all these different sectors.
Brilliant. Okay. So, Dana, it's been absolutely amazing having you on. I've learned so much. I knew quite a lot about Sussex Bay already. But so what's the one thing listeners can do right now to support Sussex Bay or get involved in the Blue Nature Recovery Project?
Bring it on. So if you're not sure where to start, our engagement lead, Alini, has done some really nice web pages for us in terms of get involved. And on there's lists of, for example, ways to volunteer with organisations. For me, I talk about this a lot. Consider becoming a citizen scientist. So what does that mean? Well, it's free. And some of you listening will know about this, and some of you won't know about this. When you're next walking out and about and you're lucky enough to see a flock of Dunlin birds or dolphins around Beachy Head, typically, or Shoreham, Brighton, or some kelp washed on the shore, if you're interested, take a photo, because there's organisations that would really relish that data, that photo, like Sussex Dolphin Project, Sussex Kelp Recovery Project, RSPB, because they can use that data to help with nature recovery. And that data and that, if you like, action isn't just data, it's a connection to nature. And I could go on and on, but I won't. But there's loads of research which has shown that that helps with health and well-being in terms of reducing anxiety. But, finally, there's 1.5 million of you in Sussex Bay. How awesome would it be if we had 1.5 million citizen scientists helping us all out?
That sounds powerful indeed. And the website address again?
www. Does anyone say that anymore? sussexbay.org.uk.
sussexbay.org.uk. Thank you, Dean, and we'll see you next time for A Drop in the Ocean. Thanks for listening to A Drop in the Ocean, the podcast that brings together ocean change makers and digital communications experts, helping us all amplify our impact. New episodes will be available from your streaming platform of choice. Please do like, comment and share and help us spread the message. See you next time.